we're going to move on to a little section now around your reflection and sharing. And we'll move with Nick. And then we'll come back, and if you can reflect back on the day, we've got a Mentimeter activity that some of you might like to share in their thoughts. But Nick Magnanus, who's the first, thank you, Magnanus, who's the first and further year coordinator in FAS. So over to you, Nick.
Okay, yeah, so hi everyone. As Kathy said, I'm the FFAA coordinator in School of Arts and Social Sciences. So I just wanted to spend just the last 2 minutes, I think, to get us to reflect a little bit on what we've been, presented with today in regards to kind of reflective practice and self-care and so on. So there is a Mentimeter. I don't know if that could be shared while I suppose I give a couple of reflections.
Mine's put it up, yes.
Thank you. So I've been thinking about, the concept of self-care over the last couple of days, and it actually links really well to what Anne Gardner was saying, because it became clear to me that we cannot separate connecting and caring for our students from caring also for our own well-being. So I know that as an educator, I perceive that if my students are not comfortable, or if they're not connecting either with each other or with me, then that impacts also on my own well-being. So for me, caring for students and also caring for myself is something that goes hand in hand. So as you can start sharing your thoughts about, what is perhaps one thing that you might consider to implement in your practice to improve connection and care with your students, I'd just like to share a very quick kind of reflection about my own experience this semester so far. So I coordinate a subject in FAS, and in this subject I have one Zoom tutorial and I also have one face-to-face tutorial. So I think like most of you actually thrive on that face-to-face interaction with students. So I was very, very excited to return back to campus and teach that online, that face-to-face tutorial once a week. It surprised me, however, how difficult it was in those first few weeks for students to connect with their classmates or with me because of the implementation of those social distancing restrictions. So I think there were like two factors at play. First, I think that the students themselves had almost kind of forgotten what a real classroom environment was, and that kind of surprised me after just one semester of doing remote learning. But second, and most importantly, I think my face-to-face tutorial only had about 18 students, so most of them were in the Zoom tutorial, and they were all scattered across a very large room, with quite a few kind of meters between each other, making kind of group work and social contact really difficult. So it kind of shocked me in those first couple of weeks that I kind of had to rethink about how to give a face-to-face tutorial in these new conditions, and also how to rethink how to actually use the room and which activities were actually suitable in this new environment. So I had to do that, while at the same time what actually worked in that new environment obviously wouldn't work on the online Zoom tutorial. So I had to kind of manage both situations at the same time. So I think it was a really good reminder that we can never get too comfortable with our usual strategies and practice, because there are times when relying on what we usually do just doesn't work anymore. So in terms of how I went about improving connection and care for my students, and thus also care for myself, I think it was about a willingness to let go of previous habits and routines, to kind of take a step back, to think about what the learning outcomes are and decide new ways of engaging students. So after a kind of bumpy first couple of weeks, I think the students slowly began to connect with both each other and also with me. So I'd really be interested to kind of hear what your thoughts are on the Mentimeter, to see if you kind of had any kind of similar experiences either in the online space or, returning back to campus face-to-face. I see that there are, sorry, Kathy?
Simone is sharing, that's great, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I have some, interested to see some thoughts. So I have like, in my tutorial, I asked on 1 week, are they okay? One-on-one check-ins, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Co-creation with students, examples, rules of engagement, ways to communicate. Yeah, I think that kind of you need to kind of have that conversation with students, not only with those online classes, but also when you're returning back to those face-to-face classes about what they're expecting, about what they actually need in the current circumstances. And, you know, it should be a kind of, you know, I think the students and the facilitator, the educator should kind of meet each other kind of halfway, you know what I mean? Explain to the students, you know, what you're actually kind of finding difficult about the social distancing, about the online classes, set the expectations. Yeah, I agree. And I think more importantly is get students to come up with solutions.
So thank you, Nick, and thank you, everyone. Please keep continuing adding things to this site. We've gone a little bit over now. We're now 10 to 4. So we used to have the forums for 2 hours, so you can see why, and we're trying to add. But thank you, Nick. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Georgina. Thank you, Alicia, Alisa, Simone, and all the wonderful attendees and the input you've put in, the UPass leaders, the students and their poems, Susan, I've forgotten Susan, and the wonderful students from Equity. A really a great community. And I think we share already, and you can see that from the comments people have made, but building it out into the wider community and how you can influence others in getting that change happening. I think that's our little slow change with your colleagues and just getting that discussion around no longer the water cooler, but somehow in the Zoom meetings that we have. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all the team and all the help everyone's done.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy. Thank you.
Says goodbye. Thank you, Kathy.
And we'll keep the chat and I'll put that there. And thank you, Simone. That's fantastic. Great.